Everything that it is official. Ink to paper, baby. Ink to paper. Tres Leches is back in full effect. The blonde bomber, okay? The one who was willing to fight and throw the Hadoukens. Sophie Cunningham is officially back in the fold. And Kelsey Plum took a $400,000 pay cut. And that is raising many questions about Kelsey Mitchell.
At first look, the numbers don't make sense because there shouldn't be any noise about a one-year return. However, shirt sales for the Indiana Fever are increasing at a rate that seems nearly unrealistic. The return of Sophie Cunningham has, for some reason, completely changed the tone of the franchise.
How much money she got, but there are players out there that have gotten a ridiculously insane amount of money. Max deals that are total head scratchers. Seriously. But here we are, first year of real money being tossed around, and this is what happened. Breaking. Alexa Philippou broke this. Sophie Cunningham has agreed to a one-year deal to return to the Indiana Fever, sources told ESPN. Cunningham joins guards Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hall. And coming back to the Fever,
Nobody anticipated that a routine re-signing would become a major economic event. But as soon as Sophie Cunningham discreetly decided to return, odd things began to happen with the Indiana Fever. And it was more than simply excitement. It was a rush, a spike, a veritable shopping frenzy that gave the impression that a championship had already been won before a single game had been played.
Guess who's back? Dun, 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 dun. Sophie Cunningham just signed a deal, a one-year deal with the Indiana Fever. Good for her. I'm actually really happy she's back. She was just making me nervous yesterday with these goofy videos sending mixed signals. Like, yo, what the hell's going on with Sophie Cunningham? She's going through something. But they gave her a one-year deal, and I still think that video was about the Fever because she said, I'm going to bet on myself. So they gave her a one-year deal, not a multi-year deal.
The idea that a single player signing a one-year contract could cause apparel sales to soar seems nearly absurd at first. However, this is the point at which the story begins to defy expectations since it is more than just a basketball deal. It's about chemistry, timing, and a squad that manages to become the WNBA's most captivating plot.
Are in for a doozy, courtesy of Alexa Philippou, ESPN. Breaking. Sophie Cunningham. Let me move this right here. Boom. Sophie Cunningham has agreed to a one-year deal to return to the Indiana Fever, sources told ESPN. Cunningham joins guards Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hall in coming back to the Fever. Indiana has also added newcomers Monique Billings and Ty Harris so far this free agency, okay? So Tres Leches is back in full effect, baby. We back, baby. Let's go. Sophie Cunningham is officially back with the squad. This is something we all wanted and we all expected.
People believed they understood what was going on in Indiana, but this move made everyone reconsider, since this is the part that first no one wants to admit aloud. Cunningham was brought back by the Fever for many reasons than just sentimental one related to her shooting. They brought her back because late in the previous season, something clicked that they couldn't afford to lose, and that just so happened to sell concert tickets and jerseys.
Beyond her game skills, it looks like she brings chemistry to the team. Welcome back, Shooter. Welcome back. Great news. Tres Leches is back together again. Yeah. Well, I did this last year when I was banging the drum for Sophie to be in the three-point contest and not Lexi. I went back and looked at the stats, and there was about a 25-game period where Sophie was the best three-point shooter on the Indiana Fever. She was the one knocking down shots and had a higher shooting percentage from three-point range. So, never mind the enforcer, never mind the toughness, all this other thing. She can knock down a shot.
Although it is easy to forget today, her initial stint in Indiana was extremely difficult, and injuries frequently disrupted whatever rhythm she attempted to establish. As a result, it was simple for detractors to subtly categorize her as disposable or, at best, interchangeable. However, there was a moment that turned everything upside down. Cunningham wasn't just good from mid-July to mid-August. She was incredibly effective, shooting over 50% from three-point range, the kind of percentage that causes defenses to fear and fans to instantly remember your name every time they open a shopping app. She abruptly ceased playing a supporting position and began Indiana to have one of the most distinctive personas in basketball. Caitlin Clark, who has already made the Fever a national obsession and attracted viewers who had never even considered watching a WNBA game before, is at the center of it all. However, the fact that Clark is no longer the only one receiving this attention is what sets this situation apart. She has a cast, a very particular cast. Cunningham recently landed a part in it. The way this team works together is unquestionably fascinating, and supporters have begun to realize that the Fever are not only talented but also chaotic in the most entertaining way imaginable.
Right. So fall back, haters. Anyway, Sophie Cunningham is back, and I'm happy she's back. She got that fire, and I like that she brought that spirit to the team that was missing from years before. And Sophie Cunningham is actually a decent basketball player. I don't know why people hate on her and say, oh, look at her stats. No, she's actually a solid basketball player. She's what you need, what you want from the bench. She brings the energy, she's consistent, and she hit some clutch shots, especially in that Commissioner's Cup. She hit a nice three to extend the lead, and I'm like, this girl is really, really good.
With that bold, even reckless confidence, Clark is orchestrating everything. Cunningham, on the other hand, spreads the floor and makes threes as if she's attempting to prove a point with each possession. In the midst of all of that, there are moments that feel more like controlled lunacy than structured basketball, which is precisely the kind of product that sells since consumers are purchasing jerseys based on personalities rather than simply statistics. Cunningham, on the other hand, handled it as proof that the atmosphere will endure. At that point, the numbers began to rise. Sales of merchandise are truthful, and the Fever store began shifting equipment at a rate that even insiders were surprised by, since it wasn't intended to be the action that caused a surge, but it did. And the reason it did show a more significant aspect of this team's future. Because Kelsey Mitchell was the subject of another conversation that was subtly developing in the background while everyone was rejoicing over Cunningham's homecoming.
Hey, come on, did y'all think she was going to listen? We are the #1 team for the championship right now. Did y'all think any of the players from last year was gonna go anywhere? Where better do you go? You come play for Indiana, you automatically gonna have more fans, more people care about you. You're gonna be seen. You playing next to the greatest thing that ever happened to the WNBA and Caitlin Clark. Like it's unmatched. Also, this is another thing I told everybody, even when I went live yesterday, don't worry. Sophie will be back. Now, she did sign a 1 year, and I understand why. We ain't got to get into that.
However, this is where things start to get a bit awkward because, although Cunningham returned on a short-term contract that provides the team options, Mitchell made a totally different choice, and supporters have begun making connections that may or may not even make sense. Simultaneously, Kelsey Plum made headlines throughout the league for accepting a large pay reduction in order to assist her team in building a stronger roster. This tale quickly became the kind that sparks controversy. The conversation abruptly changed. It was no longer simply about Cunningham coming back, because controversy, even minor controversy, tends to magnify everything around it, including jersey sales. It began to become about sacrifice, priorities, and what it truly takes to build a contender. Because fans are now choosing sides, discussing choices, and becoming more involved in the narrative rather than merely rooting for a team. Additionally, every time someone disputes who is more dedicated to winning or who made the better financial decision, they are subtly maintaining the Fever at the forefront of the discussion, which again translates to visibility. Additionally, sales are correlated with visibility.
So, Cunningham is back. We have the team that everybody wanted. Basically, the Fever brought back last year's team, minus like Howard, which I wish we had, and I'll take Ari, and added Caitlin to the mix. So I think there's going to be a lot of criticism. I think it might take take a little bit to get that crew dialed in with adding Caitlin to it, but I think we have a great shot. I think we can go far. Everyone stays healthy.
However, this is the twist that adds even more intrigue to the entire issue. The Fever are not yet behaving as a group that is committed to a long-term strategy. Offering Cunningham a one-year contract rather than the multi-year security she allegedly desired points to a very calculated move. Most significantly, it implies that Indiana is continuously developing, experimenting, and making space for greater things. Because each deal becomes a part of a much bigger picture in a league where wage cap decisions may define an organization for years. The Fever are obviously attempting to keep their options open at the moment. They must pay for their young stars. They need to think about possible draft selections. And when fans are considering chemistry, things start to get pretty intriguing. Additionally, both viewpoints contribute to the same result in some way. And that's precisely where Indiana is at the moment. Even though Cunningham's return initially appeared straightforward, it fits neatly within that pattern. Fans are reassured without the team being locked into a long-term commitment. It allows for evolution while maintaining the present identity.
Finally reached a deal with Sophie Cunningham for a one-year contract to bring the team together that was on a run last year until everybody got hurt. Now, Sophie claimed fame last year after she tackled down J.C. Sheldon in a game that saw Sheldon and Mabry knock down Caitlin Clark. And Sophie stepped in and said, you know what, I'm not taking it. And she took after J.C. Sheldon.
Above all, it maintains the momentum, because it is very hard to regain momentum after it has been lost. However, the Fever are currently losing nothing. If anything, their speed is increasing. And the most obvious indication of that is the sales of jerseys. The fact that this spike is occurring before the season even starts, meaning that expectations are already rising, makes this even more enticing. When it anticipates personality and narrative tension, then the current events will seem more like a sneak peek than the main event. Additionally, the Indiana Fever's present attention spike will appear to be the first signs of something far bigger that is still developing beneath the surface. In actuality, Indiana has found itself in a situation that most teams spend years attempting to engineer. Organic attention that is unanticipated, feels natural, and is hard to ignore. Because viewers' sincere interest about whether what they're viewing is sustainable or just a well-timed flash is driving it rather than marketing campaigns.
I was hoping that she could possibly go for a 2-year deal. I wonder how much money this 1-year deal is going to be. As I've been seeing, the 1-year deals are a little bit more expensive than the 2-year deal. So what is Sophie being signed for? That's my biggest question, but it is beautiful work to have her back. We know what she was doing last year with the 3-and-D, right? The spark of the team. When the team was stagnant, she come out, talk some trash, get a turnover, run it coast to coast, right? And she turned into one of the Splash Sisters. That girl was shooting the Wilson off the ball, huh?
When outcomes start to match expectations, that kind of attention becomes more potent because curiosity quickly turns into belief. And belief is what transforms casual viewers into ardent fans who pay close attention to every development as though it were a drama in progress. This team is still surrounded by a degree of uncertainty at the moment. Because people are still asking questions rather than drawing hard conclusions, the narrative is able to develop rather than plateauing too soon, which is precisely what is driving the debate. There is a quieter at the same time. Additionally, compared to her prior tenure with the squad, she is entering an environment where expectations are much higher. This combination essentially transforms her entire season into a prolonged assessment, where each contribution she makes is evaluated not only for its immediate impact, but also for whether or not it aligns with the organization's long-term goals. Because her shooting, movement, and ability to complement Clark are all being closely examined as markers of whether this pairing can develop into something lasting rather than transient, this reality makes every possession she plays urgent.
Basically, the same crew coming back. I think we can do it, just adding Caitlin. So I'm stoked. Everybody's stoked. I know that they wanted Cunningham, and we got her. So, I mean, there's some super teams being created out there. Atlanta's looking rough. But, yeah.
Although they may not always express it explicitly, fans are aware of this pressure. And because individuals are inherently driven to circumstances when something significant is at stake, that sense of stakes is one of the most potent motivators of participation. The ongoing debate surrounding Kelsey Mitchell, whose off-season choices have subtly introduced a different narrative regarding priorities, values, and team-building philosophy, further complicates the picture. Those discussions stay in the background and are viewed as unimportant to the thrill of the team's advancement as long as the Fever continue to perform well. However, Fever's current situation is both exciting and risky because they are taking advantage of momentum while also bearing the burden of maintaining it in a setting where expectations are rising more quickly. Since initial excitement leaves space for surprise, maintaining momentum is usually more difficult than creating it. On the other hand, prolonged attention necessitates improvement, consistency, and the capacity to consistently meet ever higher standards.
With Indiana on a 1-year deal, that part of it is sort of interesting just because she had said on her podcast previously, I forget the exact wording, but basically the idea was that she wanted to be able to like settle down somewhere and feel cozy and wanted a big contract in that sense. So, a big contract I'm sure applies monetarily, but also maybe, annually as far as the years that are on it. But this is not that. So perhaps Sophie sacrificing that sort of security in order to run it back with the Fever. Of course, it was.
Fans start to expect bursts of brilliance as the norm rather than being impressed by them, which puts more pressure on all of the team's important players. For Clark, this pressure takes the shape of defensive changes intended to reduce her impact, which compels her to modify her playmaking and decision-making in ways that demonstrate she can continue to be successful even when opponents are deliberately trying to outwit her. Cunningham's task is to be consistent over the entire season. Because long-term value is determined by the capacity to consistently perform at that level under many circumstances, even though a brief period of exceptional shooting can draw notice. Additionally, each matchup becomes a continuation of a larger story that fans are actively following because of the way they connect to create a narrative that goes beyond the confines of the game itself. Because of this, the situation feels less like a conventional basketball season and more like a continuous series in which every game advances the plot, character development, and team relationships. Because they participate in conversations, buy goods, and identify with particular players and viewpoints in addition to watching games, fans are no longer merely passive participants in this process.
Sophie was doing right before she got injured and put out for the season, she was really balling, man. That lady was hooping. All right, regardless of how anybody might feel about her, that girl was hooping. And she was coming through in a major way for the Indiana Fever. So shout out to Sophie Cunningham signing back to the Indiana Fever. I absolutely love it, man. I love it. I think that is a huge addition to the Indiana Fever. She knows the running gun. She plays just like how Caitlin wants to play. She loves Caitlin. So, yeah, man, I think this works out fantastically. All right, this is it. This is good. Now,
this degree of participation explains the sharp increase in jersey sales that followed Cunningham's re-signing. Because the change was seen as indication that the story that fans had grown attached to will go on, rather than just a roster update. The audience's sense of continuity was bolstered by the notion that the chemistry they had enjoyed witnessing would endure, even if only momentarily. Additionally, the roster's transient status provides an element of uncertainty that heightens the story's appeal, because it gives fans the impression that what they're seeing might not continue forever. Whether the company's cautious approach to contracts will prove to be a strategic advantage, whether Cunningham can land the long-term role she is successfully auditioning for, and whether the current version of the team becomes a moment that must be experienced in real time. If those outcomes come to pass, the present spike in jersey sales will be seen as a precursor to a much more significant change, one that transforms the Fever from an intriguing plot to a league-defining force. However, the narrative may easily flip from excitement to cynicism if the squad fails to live up to expectations, if cohesion breaks down, or if the pressure starts to reveal shortcomings.